Alrighty, hello everyone. We finished up chapter 15 in Likutei Amarim. This is Chabad Hasidus for the non-Jew, or lessons in Tanya for the non-Jew. I forget what I originally called this class, but basically we focus on the non-Jewish walk, uh, journey within Torah as explained in Chabad Hasidus, and we are currently in the magnum opus, I guess you might call it. I don't know if the Alter Rebbe would, but I think most people do. The magnum opus called the Tanya, which is a foundational work of Chabad Hasidus, or the foundational work of Chabad Hasidus by the Alter Rebbe, who was the founder of Chabad Hasidus. We are in the first section called Likutei Amarim, and we just finished up chapter 50. We're going on to chapter 51. And we are in lessons in Tanya, which is commentary alongside the actual text of the Tanya. We talked about the left side, the side of Gevura, how soul might feel like it wants to actually leave the body, and how the Alter Rebbe says, don't don't do that. You got things to do here. You don't have to go anywhere. So the title page of the Tanya tells us that the entire work is based upon the verse in Devarim 30:14. Ernestine's joining. We'll wait on her. Hey, Ernestine. We got Dixie too. Hey, everybody. Okay, here we go. We just getting started. Chapter 51. The title page of the Tanya tells us the entire work is based upon the verse in Devarim 30:14. For this thing, the Torah is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. Chip and I were talking earlier about what it was like in Christianity for a lot of people, and one of the verses in one of the not verses, but one of the proofs that they use for getting rid of the Torah is that it's too hard. You'll never be able to do it, and you just get rid of it, basically. Um, that's one of their not proofs, but one of their arguments. But Devarim 30:14 says the Torah is actually very near to you. It's in your mouth and in your heart that you may do it. And the concluding phrase that you may do it implies that the ultimate purpose of the entire Torah is the fulfillment of the mitzvah in practice. In order to clarify this, chapter 35 began to explain the purpose of the entire Seder Histalshalus. This is the down chain of godliness, basically. How he conceals himself. Uh, so I guess it would be the concealment of godliness, but even in actuality, it still is godliness. Chain of descent, the spiritual levels from the highest emanation of the Creator down to our physical world. So it's called the Seder Histalshalus. Seder means order. And so the purpose of both is to bring a revelation of God's presence. I feel like I missed a word. I'm sorry. The Seder Histalshalus and of man's serving God. The purpose of both is to bring a revelation of God's presence. That is the sole purpose of man, is to do Torah and mitzvahs, to take Hashem, the concealed part of Hashem, and reveal him. The purpose of both is to bring a revelation of God's presence. So we are supposed to reveal. God conceals, Hashem has concealed himself. We are supposed to reveal him into this lowly world and to elevate. He's already in the world, but we have to reveal him into this lowly world and to elevate the world spiritually so that it may become a fitting dwelling place for his presence. To further explain this, chapter 35 quoted the words of the Yanuka and the Zohar that a Yisrael should not walk 4 cubits bareheaded because the Shekhinah dwells above his head. This light of the divine presence, continues the Zohar, resembles the light of a lamp, where oil and wick are needed for the flame to keep burning. So you have the you have the oil in the vessel, then you have a wick, and then you have the flame. A Yisrael should therefore be aware, says the Zohar, of the Shekhinah above him and keep it supplied with oil, which is good deeds, as the Tanya explains, in order to ensure that the flame of the Shekhinah keeps its hold on the wick, the physical body. Basing himself upon this analogy of the Zohar, the Alter Rebbe asked in the same chapter why the oil, the fuel for the light of the Shekhinah, has to be good deeds. The divine soul is truly a part of God above, chapter 2. Why is it not sufficient to serve as this fuel? So the divine soul is the nefesh elokis. This is a godly soul that is given in utero to the child, which is the nefesh behemoth, the animal soul, and the goof that is being built, the body that's being built. So you have the godly soul, you have the animal soul, and then you have the goof, the actual body. And the animal soul is what enlivens the body. So the divine soul, the nefesh elokis, is truly a part of God above. And why is it not sufficient to serve as this fuel? Why has it got to be the body and the lower soul, the animal soul? And Chip, I've talked about this many times before, but it appears to me from the reading in the tractate Nida from the Talmud, Nida 30b, it says that every human being gets this nefesh elokis, gets this divine soul. So every animal soul gets this divine soul, but at birth it goes makif. It hovers above because sin creeps at the door, meaning the opening of the womb. So when a person is born, they are enwrapped in that klipa of this world, or they're shocked by the klipa of the world, I should say. And the nefesh elokis cannot dwell where there's sin, so it goes makif. And for Yisrael, the Yisrael gains back. That nefesh elokis returns to where every Yisrael has this nefesh elokis and dwelling like within them. It is a part of them. It is not just makif. It is actually in the panimi, in the inner aspects of them being revealed. And it appears to me the way I'm holding is that that non-Jews also have this nefesh elokis, but it's above them. It's hovering. It's like a makif, and the non-Jew might not even detect it. They might not even see it. It's based on the klipa, the thickness of the klipa that's surrounding them. The Yisrael at birth, they get rid of the klipa, or start to get rid of the klipa through their interaction of Torah and mitzvahs, particularly with boys, I should say, in circumcision. So that is like the first mitzvah that they technically interact with. And for women, it's Torah and mitzvahs as well. It's just obviously not going to be circumcision. Um, and then a Yisrael, whether it's bar or bat mitzvah, at their bar mitzvah, then they fully accept that nefesh elokis. But for the non-Jew, there's not, even though it could be a similar process, it's just not. I mean, we're not born into that kind of environment, usually. So that's how I explain that, and just to kind of give you a little bit of a reference. It's not that non-Jews can't receive an nefesh elokis, it's just that they usually don't. Just there's so much klipa, so those angelic forces are so powerful, so to speak, in this world, and it's not really their own power; it's really Hashem. But he works through those forces, or I don't know how else to describe it. I may not describe it accurately, but he empowers those forces. His shefa in this world is through those angels and the spheres of this world. Um, And if you don't have the revelation of Torah and Hashem, then a person's going to think, oh, that's all that's in the world. It's all these powers and bright lights and sounds and everything. And one might not think of anything greater or higher. Um, or maybe if they do, they only think of the sun or the moon or the spheres, the stars and constellations as being the highest thing, which is actually where we get the term Akum, Eved Kohavim Umazalot, the servants of the stars and constellations. They only think that those are the greatest things in the sky, or the greatest things, so that's what they serve, and that is idolatry. That's where the term idolatry comes from. So we're talking about this divine soul. Why is it not used? It's because it's not sufficient to serve as the fuel. He answers that the divine soul, even of a perfect tzaddik, is a conscious entity. This conscious existence of the soul does not become utterly overwhelmed and nullified by God's presence in the world to the extent that the soul can become one with God's presence. Therefore, the soul cannot serve as fuel for the light of the Shekhinah, for the oil must become totally converted into light. Just as physical fuel is consumed as it burns, it becomes converted into light. Whereas the soul remains in conscious existence. Only good deeds, mitzvot, can serve as fuel for the light of the Shekhinah, for they are God's will and wisdom, which are expressions of his essence, and thus utterly united with him. For the soul to become united with God, it must therefore perform mitzvahs. So we're still not into the Tanya yet. This still is the lessons in Tanya, but here's the deal, and here's where I'm holding. This is it for humanity, Torah and mitzvahs. Non-Jews start in a different place. They start in a different position than Yisrael, and it's a big dichotomy. But it's the same, similar performance. And non-Jews, okay, so I don't want to say go ahead and start doing all the Torah mitzvahs, but for non-Jews, the gateway, it appears to me, and in my studies, is that it is through the gateway, which is the boundary. So you have two boundary, you have a boundary, and on two sides you have the 70 nations, which are the Goyim, which is the backside of the 70 souls of Yisrael. And there's a border. There's a border there. Even though we don't physically see that border or whatnot, there's a border. And there and on that border there's a gate. And on that gate are the Sheva Mitzvot, the seven commandments. And in order to live in the land, in order to go from the Sitra Achra, the other side, into the side of holiness, you have to start going through that gate, and that's where the Sheva mitzvahs are. So when one internalizes and accepts the seven because the Torah says so, they are now able to dwell in the land. They're now physically able to cross that border by doing the actual Torah and mitzvahs. And so that's an entry point of the Torah and mitzvot here for anyone, particularly for the non-Jew. And it's a process. And one has to do it according to the Torah. It can't just be the seven according to what their forefathers told them, because their forefathers are what's called B'nai Noach. And B'nai Noach, because they didn't do it, they are loosed. The Talmud says they are loosed from being mitzvah, from being commanded. They're loosed from the mitzvahs. It's not that they're not obligated anymore, but they're loosed being commanded and does. And to be recommanded is to accept them as the Torah and the sages describe. And that is called Ger Toshav. So a lot of us here, we call it Ger Toshav. There's not a lot of, there's no base din for a Ger Toshav today. So it creates a bit of a problem, because you'll have people that are at the Madrega, the level of Ger Toshav. Even the Divine Code guys say this. Rabbi Moshe Weiner said this, but there's people that are at the level of Ger Toshav. Here's the deal, though. There's no beis din to accept them in a governmental way. There's plenty, I shouldn't say plenty, but you will find three chaverim, three friends, three Torah scholars that are your friends. You will tell them that you keep the Sheva mitzvahs, and they will accept you. They will accept your acceptance. Now, technically, that is called Ger Toshav, but because there's no Yovel, the Ger Toshav can't fully be implemented because it requires government in order to implement the laws of Yovel. And what are one of the laws? What's the importance of Yovel in regards to Ger Toshav? And oh my goodness, what tractate is that? But it's um, said there. Why? Because a Ger Toshav can, if he has an Eved in Ivri, a Hebrew slave, he has to release him. If there's no Yovel, and if Yisrael is not enforced today, Yisrael cannot make that Ger Toshav release their Jewish slave, which is a problem. So that's why the Ger Toshav is not fully accepted. But 99% of the aspects of Ger Toshav are today. But it's just not enough to call it Ger Toshav fully today. So, but there's tons of other aspects of Ger, tzedakah, returning lost items, helping one another out of a pit, doing other mitzvahs in the Torah, like honoring parents and the like, that are not one of the seven, but that are like Ger Toshav. And so that's why a lot of us here, we say we are Ger Toshav or like Ger Toshav, even though Yisrael does not fully accept us. And some people that are not in our group just have a hard time with that. They have a hard time with us doing mitzvahs beyond the seven for the sake of heaven. Their thing is that we should only be doing it for selfish motives, for the sake of this world, not for the sake of heaven. Which is a problem because that's called avodah zarah, and it's forbidden to do avodah zarah. You shouldn't do things for the sake of this world. We don't do things to create separation. Things that create separation is avodah zarah, and that we learn that in chapter 22 of the Tanya. So it's very important that we are striving for Torah and mitzvahs, starting with the seven. Very big deal. In this union of the soul with God through mitzvahs, chapter 35 continues, there are two levels. Through Torah study, the light of the Shekhinah is revealed within the soul, together with the soul's two inner garments, thought and speech, which become absorbed into God's light and united with it in utter oneness. But for the Shekhinah to rest upon the physical body and upon the animal soul, that nefesh behemoth we were talking about, that animates it. So a lot of people think that the nefesh behemoth is the body, is the goof. That's not the case. The nefesh behemoth is in the blood, and it animates the body. It enlivens the body. It's not its own thing. It truly is just Hashem, but from our perspective, it looks like it. So for the Shekinah to rest upon the physical body, the goof, and upon the animal soul that animates it, mitzvot must be performed in actual deed on the physical level. And this can take place only through the medium of the animating or vital soul together with the body. So the animal soul, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like the nefesh elokis, the godly soul talks to the animal soul, the nefesh behemoth, and then the nefesh behemoth tells the body what to do. So there's a chain of command, but the problem is the nefesh behemoth can get out of line. The nefesh elokis is truly a part of Hashem. It does not change. There's no affecting it. And you don't have to raise. You don't have to rectify the godly soul. What happens is it will leave you. If you cannot receive it in some way, which we're not going to talk about it right now so much, but if you do not have an element of bittul, if you are not questioning yourself and asking whatever you consider to be the greater power, what am I supposed to be doing? Your vessel does not have the ability to receive, and therefore you will not, by definition, receive a nefesh elokis. You won't, because you don't have a vessel worthy to hold it. There's nothing. There's you know, it's not empty enough for it to be. The good news is a lot of people say, "Oh, you got to be Jewish." No, because there are certain non-Jews that have that element of bittul, that it appears to me they can start receiving that nefesh elokis, even though not fully, like a Yisrael, they can start interacting with it, because Hashem deals with everyone measure for measure, and if there's an element of bittul, an element of measure to receive, or excuse me, if a person has an element of bittul, then they have an element to be able to receive, and the starting point is through the Torah and mitzvahs of the seven, because it truly is a part of Hashem. The Torah itself, when you internalize it, you are receiving that nefesh elokis. So a person, even if they're an idolater, as long as they have an element of bittul to them, even though they're doing idolatry, as long as they have an element of bittul, they can read the Torah and start to elevate their nefesh behemot and receiving a godly soul. As it said, that even an akum in Nochri that studies the Torah, that is oisek in the Torah, is like a high priest. I believe it said in two places. Was it Avodah Zarah and is it Sanhedrin? Okay, so this is very important, and that concept that I just explained is going to help explain away a lot of anti-Semitism, because a lot of anti-Semites take what they read out of context, or it might not even be taught right, but they take it out of context and they disperse it as if it's the Torah. So non-Jews have this ability. It's not fully implemented like the Yisrael, but nonetheless, it's still the same process. In further, let's see here. In this where did I leave? Yeah, so the mitzvahs have to be performed on the physical level, and this can only take place through the medium of the nefesh behemoth, the animating or vital soul, with the body. So you have to coerce the animal soul just like you would an ox. You own an ox, it's not going the right way. How are you going to coerce it to actually do work? And an ox is a really big animal, right? It takes a lot of wisdom, a lot of skill. Same thing with similar thing with my nefesh behemoths, right? In further chapters, the Alter Rebbe explains how the ultimate purpose of the entire Seder Histalshelus is the practical performance of mitzvot, which alone can reveal God's presence in this physical world. So we are revealing Hashem when we do Torah and mitzvahs. From there, he sent on to say that in order to observe the mitzvot properly with enthusiasm and soul, one must have kavana, devout concentration, animated by the awe and love of Hashem. So it has to be awe and love. So for those who aren't here, if you need to brush up like me, I always need to brush up on stuff. Awe is from the left side, the side of Gevura. It's the left attributes of Hashem. Hashem is one, but he also has attributes. Like he's got all these attributes. Right side, and the awe and love of God, which stems from the right side, the side of Hesed. And human beings were made in the image. We have the capability of those things. We have a left side and a right side. And in chapters 41 through 50, the Alter Rebbe proceeded to elaborate on various means of arriving at the different forms and levels of awe and love of God. So there's higher levels and there's lower levels. Chapter 51, I really need to brush up on those sometime. Chapter 51 now explains further the teaching of the Yanuka, that this light of the Shekinah needs oil. Okay. So what is this is the good deeds, right? That the body does, that the Nefesh Elokis makes the body do. And the Zohar, oil usually refers to the sphere of Chokhmah, literally wisdom. Here, though, the Yanuka takes it to refer to good deeds. What is the connection between practical mitzvot and oil, which refers to Chokhmah? To clarify this, chapter 51 will explain the meaning of the concept of the Shekhinah dwells or rests upon something, and how practical mitzvahs do indeed derive from the divine level of Chokhmah, which is why they can serve as the oil which enables the light of the Shekhinah to remain burning upon the wick, the human body. See, we haven't gotten into the Tanya yet. That was just the lessons in Tanya. That was just the commentary. This should be really interesting. I'm trying to think if I don't know if I'll remember if I've read this or not. Um, but this will be really interesting for non-Jews. Why? Because of that, we haven't accepted Taryag mitzvahs. We haven't accepted all 613 mitzvahs. Yet at the same time, we do mitzvahs. So how is that going to work? Uh, a few hundred years ago, and a lot of people today, but they think it's very black and white. It's very binary. There's Jews and there's non-Jews. There's no such thing as non-Jews that keep some of the Torah or keep the Torah, right? So we're kind of, I don't know if I'd call it new territory, but we're in territory that has not been seen for at least a very long time. And it frightens people. It frightens people, and then they can get upset. Some people see it as the redemption, though. Like some people see it as this is it, and I would agree with them that this really is an excellent thing for non-Jews to be getting into the Torah, to be going through that gate that I mentioned earlier, crossing that boundary. For further explanation of the words of the Yanuka mentioned earlier in chapter 35, where the Yanuka was quoted as saying that the light of the Shekinah, which dwells upon a Yisrael, needs oil, meaning good deeds. It is necessary first to explain, so that one may understand a little, the concept of the Shekinah dwelling, that it dwelt in the Holy of Holies. So, so, I'm not saying that this is right or wrong, but just remember that even a Nochri who is Oisek in Torah is like a Kohen Gadol, and here we are talking about the Holy of Holies. So this is I want to read into that a little bit, but at the same time I don't, because it can be dangerous. We want to make sure that what we're um uh thinking is accurate as much as possible. But at the same time, um a lot of our hunches end up being right. So I want to be cognizant that that's a hunch, and we want to see where that hunch takes us. And likewise, any other place where the Shekhinah dwells, what does this concept mean? What is meant when we say that a particular location is distinguished as being a place where the Shekhinah dwells rather than elsewhere? Surely the whole world is full of his glory. So this is very important. And no place is void of him. The Alter Rebbe now explains that the Shekhinah's dwelling upon something means the revelation of that aspect of God's presence known as the Shekinah. Although God exists everywhere, his existence is concealed. So Hashem truly is everywhere, but he is concealed. He uses his element of gevura to conceal himself, but even his gevura and his hesed, which is his revelation, is one within itself. So Even people who think, okay, well, Hashem's concealed, he's over there. No, he really is everywhere. It's just our position. It's our view that makes it seem like he's not. And how do we reveal? Through the Torah and mitzvahs with kavana, which is like what was talked about earlier. Kavana means conviction, or maybe conviction might be the best translation I can think of. Okay. Although God exists everywhere, his existence is concealed. But when the Shekhinah dwells upon something, this denotes a revelation of godliness. Okay. However, the key to understanding the subject is to be found in the text, and from my flesh I see God. So this is very, very, this is encapsulates the whole circle, the whole circuit. So you're talking about something that seems very high, godliness, and something very low, like your flesh. The Alter Rebbe understands these words literally. So this is a thing in Chabad Hasidus, and I would say it's very important just in Judaism in general. This is literally a thing. It's not if you make this into an allegory or something, that's where you get Avodah Zarah from. Um, oh, it's not really like that. For instance, people will say, uh, I'll give you a good example. Pig, Chabad Hasidus teaches that pig is actually from Klipat Noga. It is actually from the right side. It can be elevated, but why is it not permissible, even though it's technically originally a kosher food? It's because it's fallen. It's in a fallen state that it's now within the side of impurity, and it's only in the future will it come back to the side into the side of holiness. So why is that important? So that's half of it. The other half is that some people will say, well, it's actually mystical teaching. It's not actually physical. See, Chabad Hasidus teaches that the pig itself in the future, in the Messianic era, it will physically change. The properties of the pig will physically change such that it will chew its cud, because it doesn't chew its cud now. It just looks kosher. So a kosher animal has to not only look kosher, like split hooves and the like, but it has to chew its cud, that kind of animal. But a pig only looks kosher and it doesn't chew its cud. In the future, the physical properties will actually change and it will become kosher. Some people will spiritualize that teaching and say it's not, it won't physically change. It's a spiritual thing. And they'll say it's because like Edom is the pig is the spiritual animal of Edom. That means that when an Edomite somebody gets Torah, then that now they so now we can eat pig because the Edomite is now studying and doing Torah. Therefore, pig is now kosher and we can just eat pig, even though the physical properties of the pig itself hasn't changed. That's why it's important. I shouldn't say that is why, but from my perspective, from how I read Chabad Hasidus in chapter 26 of Igros HaKodesh, and that's how, why is that important? Because that's how Frankists understood um, this. It wasn't a literal to them. It wasn't literal that pig actually had to change. So you're going to get Frankists that actually eat pig. And that's why like some of them like left and Sabbatai Sviz and the like, they left and they joined Christianity and they joined Islam and the like. That's why it's so dangerous and why it captivated so many people. It has to be a literal thing. So from my flesh, I see God, literally your flesh. Um, literally, mamish. which is a big Chabad thing. A lot of times you'll hear mamish in Chabad circles. It's kind of a joke, but it's actually a real thing. Mamish means literally. Okay, from what we see within ourselves and our soul and body, we can visualize the parallel in the spiritual level, in the divine emanations, and the world in general. By way of analogy, the human soul, the nefashot ha'adam, the souls of the atom, pervades all 248 organs of the body, from head, the highest part of the body, to the foot, the lowest part of the body. The soul pervades the body to the extent that no organ or portion of it remains void of the soul. Every human being has these 248 organs. And we'll see it's actually 613. They're going to add 365 from the right side or left side from the redness, which is the vessels and the muscles and things. Um, so from a spiritual Kabbalistic understanding of the body, whether it's actually real or not, I'm not into that. Maybe there are some doctors that study Kabbalah and what have you, but I'm going to understand it as it's a literal thing, and that these 240, every human being has these organs. So within them are concealed Hashem. The soul pervades the body to the extent that no organ or portion of it remains void of the soul. Nevertheless, the soul's principal abode in a revealed form and dwelling place in all-encompassing non-revealed form is in one's brain. And from the brain, the soul is diffused throughout the organs. So think of it like the nerves that come from your brain down your spine into all your organs. This takes place in all the organs simultaneously. For as the Rebbe explains, this diffusion of the soul refers to the life force from which the organs derive their vitality, in which respect all organs are equal. This is one aspect of the soul's emanation from the brain to the organs, and in Hasidic terminology, it can be termed light, a revelation which is equal throughout. A second aspect of the emanation that the organs derive from the soul, which is in the brain, is the following. Moreover, each organ receives from it, the soul, a different form of life force and functional power appropriate to it, according to the organ's composition and character. So think of every organ as if it's it's a vessel with certain colored glass on it. And there's another light, so there's an actual pure light source that gets that its light gets diffused into the organ glass, if that makes sense. I don't know if I even said that well. In other words, the difference between the functional ability of one organ and that of another does not derive from the organ itself, like water in colored glass, for example, which takes on the color of its containing vessel. Rather, does each organ draw from the soul its ability to see or hear, and so on, as the Alter Rebbe continues. The eye receives from the soul a life force and ability to see. The power of sight accords with the smooth and translucent nature of the tissue of the eye. The ear receives from the soul a life force and ability to hear, the mouth to speak, and the feet to walk. Each organ in the body, in accordance with its composition and character, receives its life force and ability from the soul, which dwells and becomes revealed initially in the brain. As we clearly sense how in the brain one is conscious of all that occurs within the 248 organs and of everything experienced by them. Because the brain is the nerve center and principal abode and source of the life force of the entire body.
James, we need to go back to 3.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I have no clue where this is. 3. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Okay. The Rebbe writes. Chip, I don't know if you're familiar, but the Rebbe was the latest Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was the first. So the Rebbe writes that the Alter Rebbe, who lived a long time ago, Alter means the old Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe specifically chose the 4 faculties of seeing, hearing, speaking, and walking because these powers correspond to the activities alluded to in the opening verse, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. Namely, thought, speech, and action. Vision and hearing arose thought. More specifically, vision arouses the aspect of Chokhmah, and hearing arouses Bina. The mouth for speaking refers to speech, the feet for walking, action. Within action itself, walking is the lowest form of action.
Yeah.
Thus, the example given here is action as it descends even to its lowest level, and hence the example of the hand's action is not given. As we clearly sense how in the brain one is conscious of all that occurs within the 248 organs and of everything experienced by them, because the brain is the nerve center and principal abode and source of the life force of the entire body. The Rebbe here adds a commentary which clarifies the subject. By way of introduction, the life force from the soul, which animates the body, comprises 2 aspects. One is its life-giving force, in that the whole body is alive and draws its vitality from the soul. In this aspect, there is no difference between one organ and the next. The head, for example, is no more alive than the foot, just as the foot is no less alive than the head. The entire body, with all its organs, is equally alive throughout. In Hasidic terminology, this aspect of the life-giving force is called the light of the soul. So this seems like an axiom we should try and remember. I will probably forget, unfortunately. But the light of the soul is that life-giving force. For light shines equally upon everything around the light source. I didn't read that right, sorry. For light shines equally upon everything around the light source, regardless of the quality or nature of the objects receiving the light. So you're in a room and there's a candle in the middle of the room. Everything is touching the same amount of light, even though it looks like it might be affecting the light. It's not actually. The second aspect of the soul's life force is the specific functional power which each organ draws from the soul. This power is unique to each organ. The eye receives from the soul the power to see, the ear to hear, the mouth to speak, and the foot to walk. The manner in which the organ receives the latter life force and functional power can be explained in 2 ways. One is that the life force emanating from the soul to the organ is utterly plain and uncompounded, possessing none of the diverse qualities and powers of the various organs. According to this explanation, the various functional powers of the organs would be differentiated. With respect to the life force emanating to them from the soul, only after that life force actually becomes enclosed within the organs. For example, only after the life force becomes enclosed within the eye would it become the power of sight, and only after it becomes enclosed within the ear would it become the power of hearing. An analogy to this explanation would be water in colored glass. Although it remains colorless, yet since it is seen through the walls of a white or red vessel, for example, it seems white or red in the viewer. Likewise, each organ receives a plain, uncompounded life force from the soul, and it is the organ that gives the life force enclosed within it its specific functional ability. The eye enables the life force to give the power to see, and the ear enables it to give the power to hear. The second possible explanation, and that accepted by the Tanya, is that the soul, despite its pristine, uncompounded essence, includes in potential form all the powers of the various organs, and it is these faculties which each individual organ receives. I'd actually say they're both because that is the power of light. Light has every color in it. It's not, so I don't know how I agree with these analogies. Uh, the eye receives from the life force of the soul the power to see, and the ear receives from it the power to hear. I guess I would agree with the Tanya then. These powers were originally included in potentia within the soul. Right, in potentia, because light that we get, light contains all the colors. When it's bounced off of an object, the molecules of the object, for instance, if it's a red object, um, the molecules of that object absorb every single wavelength of light, of color within that object, except for red, which is the molecules of that object reflect red wavelengths. So that's why we see the red, because every other color is absorbed. So in potentia, light has everything within it, every color to fit this analogy. Thus, the power to see or heard does not originate only when the life force becomes enclosed within the ear. It already exists in potentia within the comprehensive life force emanating from the soul, although it is not yet revealed. That's what I would say. Okay. So I think the Tanya, which I'm not surprised by, I've never disagreed with Chabad Hasidus, but the Tanya proceeds to explain that this is the correct explanation. Because why? Because if you go from the other way, it means that the objects have a quality that is not found within the source, which can't be the case, because that would mean then Hashem is absent from something, or that some other thing has properties not within him, which means he's not one, heaven forbid, because he's not one with everything else. There's things that are apart from him, and then that would lead to Avodah Zarah, like there are other gods and the like. The commentary of the Rebbe explains why we must accept this second explanation. If we were to say that the various functional powers are not differentiated in potentia within the life force until after it becomes enclosed within the organs, like water or light, which does not itself possess a color but acquires it when viewed through colored glass, then the brain would be conscious of the same sensation from it is would be conscious of the same sensation from what is experienced in the eye as from what is experienced in the ear, because these sensations have already left their respective organs. Thus, too, water removed from a white vessel is no different from water removed from a red vessel. Once removed from the vessel, it loses the vessel's color. Likewise, messages conveying sensations from the eye would be no different from those coming from the ear, since they had already left their respective organs. Oh, okay. So let's break that down. Your brain would not be able to recognize the colors. Like, so your eye would be sending signals to your brain that your brain doesn't have has no comprehension of, because it's not contained, the not the properties so much, but the representations. There's no mapping. So the color red that comes through the eye is not mapped to the color red in your brain. It has to have the same map. It has to have the same, yeah, map. I'd want to call it a map. It has to have the same one-to-one mapping, even though they might operate on two different spheres, which would be the different worlds, I would imagine. Um, okay. One might argue, according to this explanation, which the Tanya does not accept, that when a particular organ calls into being a functional power and the life force drawn into it from the soul, this differentiation becomes acquired in the life force, like an ingot of silver, which one has been molded into the shape of a vessel, remains in that shape later too. According to this argument, the difference affected by each organ, the life force draws into it from the soul remains also in the sensation transmitted from the organ back to the brain even after it leaves the organ. This would account for the different messages received by the brain for the varying sensations and occurrences experienced by the eye and ear, for example. If, however, we say that the soul, which is based in the brain, utterly transcends any kind of differentiation, even differentiation in potentia, in which the various powers of the organs are included within the soul, then the soul within the brain would not distinguish between the sensation of what happens in the eye and the sensation of what happens in the ear or other organs, because the soul itself, according to this explanation, is utterly plain and uncompounded. Even therefore, if the messages coming from the various organs to the brain are indeed different are indeed different one from another, yet this difference would be distinguished by the soul and the brain, which utterly transcends all differences between organic functions. We must therefore say that a difference exists between the various functional powers later revealed in the organs even before the life force is actually drawn from the soul to the organs. I got to read that again. We must therefore say that a difference exists between the various functional powers later revealed in the organs. Okay. So the eye is different than the ear, even before the life force is actually drawn from the souls of the organs. So I think I explained that right. I think I got it. The Tiny will now explain at which level of the soul this differentiation takes place. Aha. Now the variation in receiving functional powers and life force by the organs of the body from the soul, each organ receiving from the soul a life force and power in a different form, does not derive from the soul's essence and being. That we should say that its being and essence is divided into 248 different parts, which are enclosed in 248 locations, according to the design of the various locations of the body's organs. Were this the case, we would say that within the soul itself, there are already revealed and differentiated the various functional powers of sight, hearing, and so on, and that these 248 powers which exist within the soul are enclosed within the body's 248 organs, each in its appropriate location. We cannot, however, accept this approach. This is going to be interesting. Because according to this, it would follow that the soul's essence and being is designed in a physical design, in a likeness and structure similar to the structure of the body, God forbid. Just as the organs of the body have various shapes and forms, so, according to this outlook, are the functional powers, while still within the soul, different from each other in form. But again, we cannot accept this. Rather, is the soul entirely a single spiritual entity? It is one, a single entity. Two, a spiritual entity. As a single entity, its oneness is plain and uncompounded. As a spiritual entity, its spirituality is in a form which is divested of any physical design and of any type of definition of physical space, measure, or limitation. Maybe there is something wrong with my analogy. We'll see here. The soul is free of all such dimensions by virtue of its intrinsic being and essence. In fact, the soul is so plain and free of all these that even when it is actually enclosed within the organs, they cannot affect any change in the soul. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe continues, and it is not valid to say concerning the soul's being in essence that it is in the brain of the head more than the feet, since its being in essence is not subject to the concept and dimension of physical space and limitation. It is therefore impossible to attribute to the soul this limitation of being more in the head than in the feet. Rather, so this is where the Taryag, the 613, come into play. Rather, 613 kinds of functional powers and vital forces are included within the soul, within its being in essence, to become actualized and to emerge from this concealment. And in conclusion, within the soul's essence. Previously, while still included within the soul's essence, they are only in potentia, and therefore hidden within the soul, not even as functional powers which are revealed as such while still included within the soul. In other words, within the soul is concealed a potential for 613 functional powers to become actualized and to emerge from concealment, i.e., to become revealed in order to animate the 248 organs and 365 blood vessels of the body through the functional powers of the divine soul becoming enclosed within the animating or vital soul, which also possesses the corresponding 248 and 365 functional powers and vital forces. I don't see how much that's any different than what we were previously talking about. I guess it's because they're not actual parts, but it's all potentia interwoven, which I would say would be like light. I guess I don't know. Maybe it's not a good analogy. Concerning these functional powers, as they are drawn and revealed from the soul into the body, the Alter Rebbe will now explain that the principal location to which they are drawn and where they are revealed is the brain. It is from there that the potential powers spread to all organs of the body. But the essence of the soul exists equally in the foot just as in the brain. Until now, the Alter Rebbe has mentioned mainly the 248 organs of the body and the corresponding 248 functional powers of the soul enclosed within them. Now, however, he goes into more detail, referring to all 613 functional powers, both these of the 248 organs and those of the 365 blood vessels, each of which has its own unique life force from the soul. This explains why he now refers to 613 rather than 248. Now, concerning the flow of all the 613 kinds of functional powers and vital forces which are drawn from the concealment of the soul where they are previously hidden and from where they are now drawn to the body to animate it, concerning this flow, the sages have said that the principal dwelling place and abode of this flow and revelation of the previously concealed powers and forces is entirely situated in the brains of the head, in the mohin that is in the head. Therefore, it is they, the brains, which first receive the power and life force appropriate to them, according to their composition and character, namely an intellect, which is divided into the three intellectual faculties called Chabad, Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat, and the faculty and the faculty of thought in whatever pertains to the brain. All these receive their life force from the soul before the other parts of the body. And not only this, that the brains receive their own life force before the other organs, but also the overall flow of all the individual streams of vitality to the other organs is also first included and enclosed in the brains of the head before it becomes revealed in the individual's organs. And and it is there, hey bud, and it is there, you can have a seat anywhere. And it is there in the brain that the core and source of the said flow exists in a form in which the light and vitality of the soul, entire soul are revealed. In other words, when the general flow of vitality reaches the brain, then the light and vitality of the entire body begin to be revealed. From there, the brain radiance flows to all the other organs, each of which then receives the functional power and vital force appropriate to it according to its composition and character. The power of sight is revealed in the eye, the power of hearing in the ear, and so on. In other words, at which point does a power of sight come into existence, ready to be revealed in the eye, and a power of hearing in the ear? Only after the overall life force of the whole body is drawn into the brain in a general manner, then a radiance is drawn from there to each organ. A radiance which is already constituted in accordance with the particular character of the organ. But all functional powers flow from the brain as is known. The Rebbe notes that the Alter Rebbe goes on to use seemingly repetitive expressions, since each one refers to a different level of incorporation within the brain. This is explained in the discourses beginning Az Yashir 5670, Uva Chodesh Hashavi 5663, and in Hemshech Rosh Hashanah 5708. I don't think I've got any of those. Maybe this. Anyways, I'm not going to get to that probably in my lifetime. Um, be nice. Um, for there in the brain is located the principal dwelling place of the entire soul in a revealed form. Although the soul actually exists all over the body equally, with no difference between one organ and another, yet the principal place in which the soul is revealed is in the brain. Since they're in the brain, oh, this is going to be cool. Since they're in the brain, the overall we got to get to. We're almost done for the night. Since they're in the brain, the overall life force which flows from the soul is revealed. That's really cool. Yeah, right. So the composite of everything is revealed there. We'll see what he says here. It is only the individual faculties of the overall life force which shines forth and radiate from there, the brain, to all the organs of the body, just as light radiates and shines from the sun into the innermost rooms. Even the heart, which is a central organ from which all other organs receive vitality, the heart diffuses all organs to receives its own vital force from the brain, which is why the brain naturally dominates the heart, as explained above. In chapter 12, it was explained that man is created with a natural supremacy of the brain over the heart, and the reason is explained here. Because the heart, despite its centrality, must in turn receive its own vital force from the soul through the medium of the brain. Even on a scientific level, there's, neurons. Your heartbeat signal goes up to your brain and then back to your heart. Um, in a truly similar manner, figuratively speaking, in the way of a muscle, just like Mishle, in the way of a muscle, in the way of a analogy, a proverb. In a truly similar manner, figuratively speaking, does the blessed Ein Sof fill all worlds so as to animate them? We'll leave it with we'll leave it like that. Until next week, guys. So thank you all for coming. Um, that was very insightful. It was also very deep. So I appreciate you all. This will be up on YouTube, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Shavua Tov, and God willing, I'll see you on Parsha study. Yep. All
All
right.
right. See you, James. Thanks
See
a
ya.
lot.
Yep. Be well.